Um, Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea, and we've talked about it somewhat on the Monday Mindset, but this idea of consistency, but not just consistency in our habits, right? We've talked about like how you build a strong mindset is that you have to be consistent in your habits. How you build great culture is to be consistent in your habits. How you get better at anything requires consistency in your habits. But I want to talk about a consistent mindset, right? Because I think that's where most people like we can have a good mindset every now and then. We can have a healthy mindset every now and then. We can have a strong mindset every now and then. But is every now and then good enough? And don't hear what I'm not saying, right? I'm not saying you need to have a healthy, strong, perfect mindset all the time, right? We're humans. We're gonna mess up. So perfection is never the goal. But when we have an inconsistent mindset, we just create issues, right? We don't have that consistent strength, that consistent confidence, that consistent perspective, which means that we're reactive to everything. It means our emotions take over more often than not. And that doesn't just undermine our influence, that undermines everything around us, right? Imagine being a leader on a team and yesterday you faced some news that you didn't expect and you handled it well. You're like, hey, that's okay. Didn't see this coming, but we'll be all right. We'll make a plan. We'll power through. We will find a way. And then 2 days from now, you get more news that you didn't expect. What is going on? Why is this happening? The just very inconsistent. And what happens when we have an inconsistent mindset is that we create inconsistent relationships. We create inconsistent culture because people don't know what version of us to expect. Like, who's going to walk in today? Is it healthy Kevin or is it stressed Kevin? Is it confident Kevin or is it anxious Kevin? And so people never really know how to deal with you. And so what we know is that our mindset shapes our actions shape our outcomes, right? We've talked about that before. Mindset shapes actions, shapes outcomes. Well, so a consistent mindset, right, where you are consistently calm, you consistently have perspective, you consistently are confident. Well, that's going to lead to consistency in action, right? Those consistent thoughts lead to consistently calm actions, consistently confident actions, which lead to better outcomes consistently. But when you have an inconsistent mindset, your actions become inconsistent, right? You do the confident thing every now and then, but other times you step in and do the anxious thing. You have perspective every now and then, so you're able to make clear decisions. Other times you completely lose perspective and make emotional, irrational decisions and take emotional, irrational actions, which leads to those inconsistent outcomes. And so we always have to be working back to like, what's our reality right now? What's the outcome of my current situation? Whether it's in relationships, whether it's in your influence, whether it's with your health. Well, that's a result of not just your actions, but your consistency of action, right? You're not going to get healthy on a diet, eating well every now and then, working out every now and then. And you're not going to eat well consistently or work out consistently if your mindset isn't committed to it. If you give in to excuses, if you give in to fear, if you give in to worry, if you give in to perfection, right? We have to be consistent with our mindset if we want consistency in action and consistency in outcome. Because what we always want to be asking is what's it like to be on the other side of you? And we talk about this often with the idea of support and challenge, right? If you lean way too heavy on support and not heavy enough on challenge, you create entitlement and mistrust. Well, if you lean way too much on challenge and no support, you create fear and manipulation. Whereas if you can find the balance between support and challenge, you create opportunity, you create flourishing, you create growth, you create progress. And the same thing is true with our mindset, right? What's it like to be on the other side of your mindset? If you are inconsistent as a leader, if you have an inconsistent mindset, what's it like to work with you? What's it like to work for you, right? Here's the support challenge matrix that we were just talking about, right? Too much challenge, not enough support is fear. Too much support, not enough challenge is mistrust and entitlement. And Tracy, if you have it available, can you pull up the leader mirror? Right. Again, always asking, what's it like to be on the other side of you? So when you have an inconsistent mindset, what is it like to be on the other side of you? Because consistent mindset, right, again, creates consistent action. So here's the leader mirror. Consistent leaders are proactive. Inconsistent leaders are reactive, right? Your mindset is determining whether or not you're proactive or reactive. Consistent leaders are intentional. Inconsistent leaders are accidental. Right? When you have a consistent mindset, you're intentional about your actions, about your responses, about your decisions, about the way you communicate. If you're inconsistent, that means you are accidental. You might communicate the right way. You might make clear decisions. You might have perspective every now and then, but you're not being intentional with it. And the more intentional you are, the more influence you build, the more clarity you build, the more commitment that you build. So again, a consistent mindset for a leader leads to you being intentional. An inconsistent mindset results in you being accidental. Consistent leaders are consistent, right? This one's obvious, but consistent leaders are consistent. Inconsistent leaders are inconsistent. And we've all worked for those leaders, right? We've been on the other side of those bosses or of those coaches where every day was a different version of them. We never knew what we were going to get. And what that does is that creates worry, that creates scurry, that creates frustration, it creates bitterness. Like, I don't know what I should do today. I don't know if they're in a good mood today. I don't know if I have permission to do this today because I did it yesterday, they were okay, but last week I did it and they were upset. You can't make progress because you're always trying to please that person, which you're trying to figure out who are they today, which means you can never grow, you can never develop. It's almost you're just trying to protect yourself at all times from an inconsistent leader. It doesn't mean they're abusive leaders, it just means they're inconsistent. It means not intentional with who they are, the way they speak, the way they think, the way they make decisions. There's no rhyme or reason, which ultimately undermines trust. Right? Consistent leaders build trust. Because even when it's difficult, their decision-making filter is consistent. Even when they have bad news to deliver, their decision-making filter, the way that they think through that is consistent. But inconsistent leaders, you never know what they're thinking. You never know why they're thinking what they're thinking. You never know what decision they're going to make or why they're going to make that decision, which stalls progress. And again, most people aren't choosing to be inconsistent, right? They're not choosing to have an inconsistent mindset. The problem is we're not waking up and choosing to be consistent. We're not waking up and choosing to build a consistent mindset. And so we just let the emotions and the stresses and the pressures and the circumstances of the day take over. Because what we know is that circumstances are always going to change. What's going your way tomorrow may not go your way the next day. You may have a healthy culture today. You may have one of your key people leave tomorrow. Right? Circumstances are always changing. Circumstances are inconsistent. How do you overcome inconsistent circumstances? With a consistent mindset. So I know this is happening. I see all that's going on. Doesn't mean I want it to happen. Doesn't mean I'm excited that it's happening, but I see it and I'm aware of it, but I know who I am and I know who we are. I know where we need to go. I know the decisions that need to be made and why we need to make those decisions. And so in those moments of uncertainty, in those inconsistent circumstances, a consistent leader brings calm and brings trust and brings clarity, right? Because they're able to make decisions with consistency, which leads to commitment, right? Inconsistency leads to compliance. People do the right thing every now and then. They do what needs to be done every now and then. And they do it just because they want to keep a job. But a consistent leader builds commitment. People show up because they want to. People do the work because they want to. They know you, they know the vision, they know what things are about. And so that gives them the clarity and the confidence to be able to commit to the way forward. And so think about where you're at in this season, right? How consistent is your mindset? Do you find yourself always taken out by news you didn't expect? Do you find yourself always taken out by the circumstances that are around you? Or do you find yourself being consistent, showing up the right way, showing up the way that you choose to show up, the way that you want to show up? Right? Our mindset shapes our actions, shapes our outcomes. If we want consistent outcomes, we have to have consistent actions. If we want consistent actions, we must have a consistent mindset. We can't be the right leader every now and then, right? We can't have a good mindset every now and then. It just doesn't work. We'll never make progress. We're always going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But when you have that consistent mindset, it's consistent progress. And it may be baby steps, but they're still steps. So where are you at in this season? How consistent is your mindset? And again, the question to consider after that is, what impact is that having? Based on your mindset, consistent versus inconsistent, what's it like to be on the other side of you? What's it like to work for you? What's it like to work with you? What's it like to lead you? What's it like to be in relationship with you? Based on the consistency of your mindset. Tracy, any thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, Don't you love a consistent person? I mean, really, think about those people in your life that you're like, every time I call, they da, 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 or every time we're supposed to meet, they're always on time, or every time she says this, she means this. You know, I think about my dad. He's passed away a few years ago, but he was probably one of the most consistent people I've ever met. And sometimes we didn't like his consistency. It was like, here's the rule, and no matter what, here's the rule. Like he would not bend on anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of appreciate that, you know? It's kind of refreshing. What do you think?
Consistent people are reliable. Right? It's like those are people, the people that I look to, like when I have questions, like, and I have mentors like, hey, what do you think about that? I'm going to people that if I think through like their characteristics, one of them across the board is consistency. Right? They're gonna use wisdom, which comes from a life of consistency, not just their emotional whatever.
Yeah,
you know, I did an exercise with a team a month or so ago. We were talking about, let's say we're at the Devon Tower here in Oklahoma City, which is like 50 stories tall. It's a really cool building. I said, imagine you're hanging out that window, like you're falling. Like, who would you want? Like, you're reaching up to grab a hand. Who would you want pulling you up? Well, you want someone that's consistent, right? Someone that you trust, someone that has strength. But then I flipped it around and said, who would you be that person for? Right? Who would you want? Would people think that about you? Would anybody put your name up there? Well, not if you're not consistent, right? Because we trust people who are consistent. So that's a great point.
Yeah. There is a question coming in from Paige. She says, I want to be a consistent leader, but I'm a very emotional person and I tend to let my emotions run me. Any suggestions on how to get control over this? So I'm sure she's thinking, well, I think she's thinking some days I wake up in a good mood, and so I let things go. Maybe that I wouldn't let go on other days. And so, yeah, any suggestions on that?
Alcohol? No, just kidding, Paige. Just kidding. That is not a giant endorsed statement. No. I think one, it's your emotions are not good or bad, right? They are what they are, but you are not your emotions. And so we can't let our emotions determine whether or not we had a good day or a bad day. Right? It was just a day. May have been a difficult day, but that doesn't mean a bad day. And so too often our emotions drive us. And so you don't want to dismiss those emotions because that's not healthy, right? Like suppressing emotions, ignoring emotions, that's not a healthy way to live. But to let those emotions take over is equally as unhealthy, right? Because that's going to become overwhelming because everything is dependent on how you felt that day. And life is what it is, you know, whether you feel like it or not, like we got to show up and do the work. On days when you don't feel like it, days when you don't want to, sometimes with people that you don't want to, right? You have a difficult conversation. Great. You still got to show up and work with that person. Or our emotions would tell us, oh, that person's toxic. We should leave. We should quit. Well, maybe. or you figure out a way forward. You know, you show up and you continue to do the work. And so I think it's one, again, give yourself a lot of grace because it is a process, right? You're not going to master this tomorrow. But I think it's understanding your tendencies. What causes your emotions to go a positive direction? What causes your emotions to go a negative direction, right? What triggers you either way, in a positive way or a negative way? And then realizing what does that lead you to do, right? When you get bad news or when something happens where you tend to go negative, okay, how does that build off of itself? You have a negative thought and a negative action and a negative reality and a negative relationship, and those things multiply, right? Unhealthy emotions multiply. They take us to unhealthy places. And so to be able to have perspective in the moment, and again, you'll get better at this. Don't expect to be great at this tomorrow. Maybe never be great. I don't know, but you can get better. But to start to work at it and say, whenever I get news that I didn't expect, or whenever something doesn't go my way, I can always take a breath and say, wait a minute, this thing happened. It's true, but it's just one thing. There's still this and this and this and all the other true and good things that allow you to kind of recenter, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago on the Monday Mindset, and we need to get Jessica on here, but it's this idea of emotional integration of like, don't shut down your emotions, but don't give your emotions too much power. Recognize them, decide if they're good, if they're true, if they're helpful, and if not, start to lead yourself to self-regulate to get back to the middle ground. Because whatever's happening around you, good or bad, you get to control how you show up. There's been a movement in the sports world lately. It's probably going to make its way to the business world called neutral thinking. I don't necessarily buy it, but the idea is like, don't be positive or negative, just be neutral, right? Just play the next play. Doesn't matter how the last play went. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Just play the next play. And so there's the good part of that is what just happened doesn't have to define this moment. Right? It's not about being neutral. It's about being intentional. It's about what does this moment need from you? Again, whatever happened yesterday, good or bad, happened yesterday. It actually doesn't impact today. You get to impact today. And so owning your thinking and putting practices in place that equip you and empower you to own your thinking. But it's a process. It'll take time, and that's okay.
That's good. Hey, John has a good challenge here for you today. He says, this is challenging stuff. Thank you, Kevin. Would your wife and family describe you as consistent? I think I could answer that for you, actually. But
John, it looks like we're having tech issues, buddy. Sorry about that.
He's the heat today.
No, John, I love that question because that's the key, right? It's like I've said for years, like all the fun stuff that I get to do, whether it's Monday Mindset or being on a stage or being with teams, being with leaders, like none of it matters if I don't do it at home.
Yeah.
None of it. Like throw it all away, burn it to the ground. If I'm not who I should be at home, legitimately none of it matters because I am desperate for my kids in 5 years, 10 years, if people are talking about me, for my kids to be like, I don't know that version of him. Like I'm desperate for that to not be their reality.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can't. So to answer your question, John, I'm getting more consistent, right? Consistency is not my nature. If you know 5 voices, I'm a connector. Consistency is my left hand. I'm usually kind of I can get too high, too low. So I'm working to be more consistent. So I would say, I don't know how they would describe me, but hopefully more consistent than I was 5 years ago.
Well, that's good. I have them on the phone, so let's just
Great.
ask. No,
Fantastic.
just kidding. I'll do that.
My wife really was just calling. We should have put her up to the microphone.
No, I certainly see it, your consistency here. And I would say, to those listening, we talk about that a lot here at the Giant office, that we can't do this work. We can't say one thing and do another. And we try and hold one another accountable in that. We are not just colleagues here. We're very good friends, and we spend a lot of time together, even outside of work at dinners and things like that. And so, and we see each other with our kids every now and then. And so it is something very important to us, is that we live what we're teaching. And so thank you, John. That's a great challenge and a great question.
And to your point on that, John, and to kind of what you're saying, Tracy, like it's really critical. All the stuff we talk about on Monday Mindset, on any of the Giant content, have people who have permission to challenge you and hold you accountable.
Absolutely.
Because if I'm not this way with my kids and my wife, like there are plenty of people in my life like, hey man, that's not good.
Yeah.
I don't like how you spoke to your wife, or you're not spending enough time with your family, whatever it may be. Like there are people who can bring that challenge. And as much as I don't like it in the moment, I need it and I want it. And what that actually does, because I don't like confrontation, like I lean into that protector mindset, right? Is my tendency. Too much support, not enough challenge. So because I don't like to be challenged or held accountable, I try to make sure I don't give people a reason to challenge or hold me accountable. Right? It's almost a self-regulating thing. Like I don't want people to have awkward conversations with me. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a good thought, John, is to go home for us, all of us, really anybody listening, and just say, hey, we're having this discussion today on the Monday Mindset. Tell me where I'm at. Yeah. That's good.
And put up your guard in terms of like, don't get defensive. Whatever their answer, that's their answer, right? And you asked for it. And so if you don't like the answer, that's okay, right? It's okay. Don't take it out on them because you don't like the answer, right? Be like, okay, interesting. Didn't expect that. I thought I'd get a different answer. So now tell me why, right? And then work on a plan to get better, right? That's leadership, right? Is being able and willing to have difficult, uncomfortable conversations, and not getting defensive in the midst of it, and being willing to get better, right? Because if my guess is people listening to the Monday Mindset, you're probably leading people. You would want that from the people that you lead. Right? If you're going to have a difficult conversation with them, you don't want them getting defensive and throwing a fit. Like you would fire them. Like, okay, you're not responsive. Like this is not, you don't fit our culture. This is not what we're about. You would want them, even if they don't agree, to say, okay, well, let's have a conversation. Like what can I do to get better? And that we always need to be responding in those situations with humility, even when it's difficult.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if y'all don't know this, in the giant logo, capital G, lowercase I, capital A, capital N, capital T, we're in a constant reminder. That logo helps to remind us that little I is all about humility, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what great leaders do. They humble themselves and they go first when it comes to challenging things like this. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, this has been great, Kevin. Thank you once again. Great reminder. And wow, what a good kind of challenge to maybe do that with a few people in our lives and
Mm-hmm.
then get the feedback. And if there are things we need to change, like you said last week, we don't need to wait till January 1st to make the changes. We can go ahead and start changing now.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we go into 2022 with a even healthier mindset. So thank you,
right.
Kevin. Thanks for all of you who joined us today. And we will see you next Monday, same time, same place.
See you guys.